Hi, I'm Katie with Katie Brings a Book. Today's shirt is Total History Nerd. I am a history teacher, and I have always been fascinated by women who didn't quite live the way society expected them to do. Today's video is all about books about women behaving badly according to maybe society's rules, and sometimes according to just rules. I've always been fascinated by this. I was raised very fundamental Christian. Trad wife was just how life was for me, and that's how I was raised. But I always didn't want that. I wanted a different life for myself, and I loved books and stories about women in history who were different than what I was expected to be like, and different than what society gave them. And so I wanted to talk about some books today that I just kind of pulled randomly. Some of these books I've read, some of them I haven't. And so the ones I haven't read, I'll tell you because I can't guarantee that they're great, but I will tell you about maybe a little bit about the women and how they just were maybe not quite behaving the way that society or people expected them to do. And maybe they were behaving badly because they were actually behaving badly. So today, historical fiction about women behaving badly. The first book is a woman who behaving badly actually worked out for her pretty well. And it's Tsarina, Serf Murderous Empress. This woman had a crazy rise to stardom. She started as the mistress of Peter the Great. And into the void steps his second wife, Catherine Alexeyevna. Now, I love Russian history. I'm so excited for this drama-filled book. And it's all about her rise to extraordinary. She's got extraordinary beauty and intelligence. And she kind of uses Peter's attentions and his rage and condemns his first wife to prison. Now, I have not read this book yet. And it's a duology, the Tsarina's daughter. But I want to read the Tsarina first. I'm so excited. She behaves badly. She murders. Russia at this time was very set by your family and what you were born into. And she defies all of that. But she's the second wife and she just rises to power. Tsarina is the story of one remarkable woman whose bid for power would transform the Russian Empire. We know a lot. We talk about Catherine the Great. Well, she was Catherine the First. Catherine the Great was actually Catherine the Second. And I cannot wait to read this book. The next one is a very recent book that came out. I did not know about this person. I have not read Tsarina. I have not read this book yet, but I cannot wait to read this. It's called The Last Assignment by Erica Roebuck. And it's about Dickie Chappelle. And she is arrested. She's a combat correspondent during the Vietnam War era, which is something I'm fascinated by. She jumps at the opportunity to be military. Now, this is at a time when the women were supposed to stay home. Women were not supposed to be military correspondents. Her marriage fails, and so that's just seen as her fault, basically. And she just basically says it doesn't matter. She's going to go witness the war at the front lines. And this is still at an era when women were allowed to be in the military slowly, but we're still relegated to only certain positions and definitely not the front lines. I mean, the front lines is still a discussion being had today, but she's going to go be a military correspondent in the front lines and witness it. She's going to report on the battles with her own boots on the ground. And she realizes that she's going to witness the front lines of the Vietnam War, which is, still a war that we discuss as being one of the most brutal. And so The Last Assignment, she did not live to this kind of concept of even during this time of women's liberation, she was going to defy those expectations and go be that wartime correspondent. An American Beauty, this is Gilded Age. And I always say, Americans do not know enough about the Gilded Age. Our modern era is deeply, deeply impacted by the Gilded Age, and we just don't learn enough about it. But this woman behaves badly by a lot of standards. She is a mistress, and she meets a railroad baron who is married and 30 years her senior. So you can have say what you want about age gap, and I have a lot of feelings about large age gaps. But they have an affair, and she moves to New York to be near him. The relationship's an open secret. His wife dies, and he marries her. But the 400, which is the elite circle, does not approve. And so she's got to kind of move in this scandal. Now, I have not read this book. I've heard a lot about it. I'm very excited to read The Gilded Age. Gilded Age is a time of very set standards. This is a Victorian, like the end of the Victorian era, where America brings over that Victorian set of standards post-Civil War in the Gilded Age, especially among the wealthy, the elite 400. And she just says, whatever. So she definitely is behaving badly. I did read the second Mrs. Astor, and I really enjoyed it. She's got another book out, I believe, about the Titanic, I want to say. This is one I've got from the library right now, and I'm really excited. And I'm going to say it's about somebody we don't talk about a lot in history, of behaving badly. And this is Eleanor Roosevelt, and I always say her name wrong, Lorena Hickok. And we talk about her because she lived with Eleanor Roosevelt, and the very personal letters that didn't get published until, I believe, 1978 between them show that their relationship was not just friendly. Eleanor Roosevelt brought her in to live in the White House with her as her own personal, as they called it at that time, friend. And it was not Eleanor Roosevelt's first relationship. And this is from Miss Hicks, who was a reporter, by the way, on FDR in the White House. And she was a very open lesbian at the time. So while I do not believe that is behaving badly at the time, that was very scandalous. And I don't think that was very scandalous at the time. And we now know that FDR had his secretary, who was his mistress, and Eleanor Roosevelt had Hick living with her, who was a reporter, and they had their separate relationships, and they would come together to be what was this figurehead in this very great marriage that was leading the country with their lovers that lived in the White House with them. And so when I say women behaving badly, I don't mean they were actually behaving badly. I mean that they were defying the conventions of the time. Okay, so I just read this book. And another couple of women that were defying convention at the time. Eunice Carter. She was the first black prosecutor in New York history. She brought down Lucky Luciano, one of the great mob bosses of New York City history, and Polly Adler, one of the great madams of New York City history. And this concept that they worked together, like possibly, to bring down Lucky Luciano. Again, not saying that it's bad for these women to do what they did. They were defying convention, and that's what I mean by behaving badly. Defying convention at the time to do what they needed to do. Fantastic book. Really talking about how women were getting, like how immigrants, because Polly Adler was an immigrant, felt like there was no other recourse to her than to get into sex work. And Eunice Carter talking about the deep prejudice that was felt for her as a black woman. Fantastic book. Britannia. Now we're going to go long history back. Boudica. Now she behaving badly, according to many historians, and this is really to the victor goes the spoils. We talk about her because she was a woman who led her people against Rome to fight against Rome in Britannia. And this is actually a compilation of a lot of different historical fiction authors. Stephanie Dray, Kate Quinn, writing about a year with Boudica. And again, defying convention, bringing her women together to fight against Rome. And Rome was aghast that a woman would fight against them. Just aghast that she would defy convention. I am very excited to read this book because I think that we have this idea of Boudica being this like rough and tumble male style tomboy because that's what we think of when we think of it. But that's because that helps our convention. but I don't think necessarily that that's the truth. And these are all women who write this, who are known for having very strong, and I think there's some male writers in here too, very strong research skills. And so I'm very excited. Boudica is something I don't know a lot about, and I'm really excited to learn more about her. Now, this is a woman who really did behave badly by any stretch of the imagination. And we're going to talk about women serial killers, Belle Guinness. I love a good historical female serial killer because I don't love serial killers. I love learning about them. I love hearing about them. I love like, what do you mean? What? And so many times you look back and you're like, were they actually serial killers? Belle Guinness very likely was actually a serial killer. Like, she killed the men, stole their money, and then would like lie to anybody that came around looking for them. When you say that she defied convention, I mean, but also she's serial killer bad. I'm really excited to read this book. I think it's going to be really good. In the Garden of Spite by Camilla Bruce, talk about a woman behaving badly, but also talk about defying convention of her time. Like, she was like, I'm going to open a hotel as a woman, and I'm going to kill the men who come see me and seduce them. So I'm looking forward to this book because I love a good thriller, and we don't have many female serial killers. How many thrillers feature female serial killers? But also, how many serial killers do we know that are female? Not many. Belle Guinness is one of them. I've loved podcasts. I've listened to some podcasts about her, but I'm looking forward to this book. Very much so. Okay, I love learning about why women were called witches, because it's just typically that they were herbalists or knew healing, and it threatened men, and or they were different, or they were single, or they were outspoken. Well, I'm different and outspoken, and I very likely would have been called a witch. I've been called a witch, actually, and I've looked at the person and been like, well, I'm in good company then, so thank you. So I'm really looking forward to this book, The Stone Witch of Florence. Also, look at these braid edges. They're amazing. And this is about, so a lot of times when we talk about witches, the origins of so many of these witch cultures and witch lore come from some way of putting women down. And even the riding the broomsticks, or, a bunch of different things that we have of this witch lore is just this concept of having to put women in their place. And so I love witch lore, not because I enjoy like the witchcraft of it, but because so much of it comes from putting women in their place. And like, well, you can't just be a smart woman. There's got to be witchcraft involved. And so the Stone Witch of Florence, though, is 1348, the Black Plague. I've read Eleanor of Avignon, which is about the same kind of time period, but I'm really looking forward to reading this book of this concept of the witch and putting women in their place and women behaving badly. And I'm really excited about that. I forgot to pull this one, but this one goes along with that. Again, The First Witch of Boston. And again, this concept of some woman is different, and so we've got to label her a witch because we can't have anyone getting any ideas. Now, can we? You're a witch. You're different. And so you're different than what we think, so we're just going to label you with something, and then later on it's going to be mad or hysterical or, hormones or, anything like that. And so for a long time we label them witches, and then we label them, oh, well, they're mad and go to insane asylum. And now we call women hysterical. And every time I hear the word hysterical, I look at them and say, would you say that about a man? Well, no, you don't call men hysterical typically. So, but I'm really looking forward to this because typically women behaving badly are called witches, or change that to a V. And they're not behaving badly. They're just being unique. Excuse me. Okay. So this is one I just got. It just released. And I'm still, so she is, and during the 13th century, so 1200s, it's Middle Ages, and she's promised in marriage to somebody she doesn't love. She's 16 years old, and she's what we would call a seer or mystic. And she doesn't want to get married to this person. She wants something more than what is defined. She wants something more than just the conventions of the time. And so she kind of runs away and she runs away and joins this kind of group of women who are trying to be independent within the confines of what they're allowed to be. Finding shelter among a group of community of religious women. We talk a lot about nuns when we talk about history during this time. But what a lot of people don't realize is if you joined a group of nuns, it was the only safe place to be a woman outside of confines of marriage. And so if you joined nuns, then nobody could really say anything about you, that you couldn't be married off. And so it was a safety place. And so I'm really looking forward to this book. It's got really good reviews coming out. And I think it's going to be kind of it's supposed to be like a fresh look at this kind of society and nunnery and religion during this time and why women join the nunnery. This next one is supposed to be drama filled. And it's The Mistress of Rome. It's about Emperor Domitian and this slave girl from Judea. And so it's got a lot of intrigue. There is falling in love with a savage gladiator and then being torn apart. And then she goes on to helping Domitian rule. It's a whole series by Kate Quinn. Before she wrote so many of her wonderful World War I, World War II, and even Cold War stories, she wrote the Borgia series and the Roman series, and this is the first of the Roman series. Borgia's also women behaving badly. Oh, Lucretia Borgia. You want to hear about a woman behaving badly to get ahead in a man's world? Lucretia. But also that's up for controversy. She fights for what she wants. We also talk about the Vestal Virgins, another group of women kind of trying to make it in a man's world. And I think that she has to do what we would consider not so savory in order to get ahead. I'm really looking forward to this. And then finally, and this is one that's going to, I feel like, not be one many people would put on the list. Because the picture looks very conventional. And this person seems very conventional. But if you really dig into it, she is not very conventional, and that is Becoming Mrs. Lewis by Patty Callahan. C.S. Lewis marries a woman. He swore never to be married. He was older. He was a confirmed bachelor, living with his brother, a professor at Oxford. And this married woman starts sending him letters because she had been reading the Chronicles of Narnia to her sons. And she has all these questions about her faith and the Chronicles of Narnia. And she starts falling in love with him. But she's married, and her husband's mistreating her. Well, in the course of things, she divorces her husband. You don't do that at this time. No. And after she divorces him, she moves to Oxford, and they get married. And that is one of the reasons that J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis stop being friends, because he marries a divorcee. And J.R.R. Tolkien, who is Catholic, says that that's not allowed in the Christian faith. Just saying. So good. Okay. All these books, some of them really did behave badly. Some of them just defied convention. All of them were interesting women. Tell me if you pick one of them to read. I would love to hear it. And remember, always bring a book.